All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. It's not quite Southern California, where swingman DeMar DeRozan is originally from, but for the first time in his NBA career, he will be calling the state of California home. Yesterday, the Sacramento Kings were able to acquire the six-time All-Star in a three-team trade with the San Antonio Spurs and Chicago Bulls. Now, the Kings received DeRozan, while we saw the San Antonio Spurs get Harrison Barnes as well as an unprotected first-round pick in 2031, while the Bulls are getting Chris Duarte as well as a pair of second-round picks. To me, this was a big move for the Sacramento Kings as they're getting themselves another prolific scorer to pair with De'Aaron Fox, and that's going to be the big thing right there. You look at DeRozan's 15-year NBA career; he's averaged just over 21 points per game for that. But you really figure since about 2016 with Toronto, for the most part, he's been in that 22 to 25-point range per season. So now you get another prolific guy who's going to go out there and score. And then if you're Sacramento, you didn't have to give up any of your big guns to go out there and get DeRozan. You still got DeMontis Sabonis, okay? We know what Malik Monk means to this team coming off the bench. You keep a Keegan Murray as well, which is big for Sacramento, as is, having the likes of Kevin Herter. I still do believe that he is under contract with the Kings. So it's one of those where if you're Sacramento, this was a team that was already top 10 in offense in the NBA last season. Guess what? They are once again going to be very formidable because you look at it. Malik Monk right now is arguably the best six man in the league coming off the bench. All right. But then you're going to have, De'Aaron Fox and DeRozan in the same lineup. You have DeMontis Sabonis who can score, pass, and rebound. Okay. Keegan Murray has really come on, since coming into the NBA with the Kings. So I'm looking at this. This was a Kings team that, they won 46 games last year, got to the play-in tournament and were bounced. Of course, a lot of that was due to the injuries. Okay. I'm not going to sit up there and just knock Sacramento for that. They had some key injuries, okay, including not having Malik Monk coming down the stretch. And probably if those injuries don't occur, Sacramento avoids the play-in tournament altogether. So now you're going to get everybody back, presumably for the upcoming season. And I think this Kings team is going to be ready to roll. And I think right now, the addition of DeMar DeRozan makes the Kings, in my opinion, a top six team in the West. I mean, you still got the Nuggets, you still got OKC, you got to look at Minnesota, you have to look at Dallas as well. Those are some of the top teams in the West. And I think this Kings team, should finish top five in the Western Conference for the upcoming season and avoid that play in. I think this Kings team is going to be exciting. Are they title contenders? We have to wait and see because the West is very tough. And, of course, there are still other moves that have to and will be made over this summer around the National Basketball Association. And on the flip side, and I'm going to touch on this more in the coming days, but it's just unfortunate for the Chicago Bulls. I mean, a couple of years ago, they put DeMar DeRozan together with Zach LaVine and Lonzo Ball, and it was just injuries, okay, that prevented the Bulls team from doing big things. And it's just truly unfortunate. And now, if you're DeMar DeRozan, you got it going in a big way, your NBA career, that is, with the Toronto Raptors, okay? And the Raptors were a quality team in the East in those days. Of course, he went to the Spurs in that Kawhi trade. Of course, that resulted in Toronto winning their NBA championship. DeRozan continued to put up good numbers on a bad Spurs team. But now, of course, after the couple of years with the Bulls, and now you get an opportunity to once again be on a playoff contender in Sacramento. So I like this move for the Kings. It's one of those where I think everybody came away from this with something that they wanted, from the standpoint that if you're the Bulls, they're looking ahead, and they're looking to retool this thing. So it would not surprise me to see Zach LaVine not in Chicago soon as well. And if you're the Spurs, you get another vet like a Harrison Barnes, coming into your organization. You signed Chris Paul over the summer as well, and the Spurs are looking to try to build and get better and get from that bottom tier of teams in the Western Conference. But of course, the centerpiece of this three-team trade yesterday was DeMar DeRozan. He makes the Kings better. I'm really looking forward to see how things gel with him and De'Aaron Fox, as well as Domantas Sabonis. And I think the Kings, they've been solid the last couple of years under head coach Mike Brown, but I really am looking forward to the upcoming season to see how things work out for the new look Sacramento Kings. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Before I chime off, got somebody in the chat box. Easy Car Mods, how's it going with you on this Sunday evening? First and foremost, thank you for chiming in to this podcast, talking a little Sacramento Kings from the standpoint of the DeMar DeRozan trade from yesterday. I'm a fan of it. I think it's something that will definitely make the Kings formidable, or even more formidable, okay, in the West. Because again, this was a 46 win team last season, got to the first round the year before. They were giving Golden State all that they could handle a couple of years ago until DeRozan got hurt. And then, of course, the Warriors were able to take advantage of that. You're saying you're a Kings fan, you just seen me going live, so you got a question. Please, please feel free to put that question in the chat box, and hopefully I can answer it for you. Okay, why Easy Car types in that question. I will say this once again. That I think this is something that is going to make Sacramento a top 5 team in the West. Like I said 2 years ago, 48 win team. Last year, 46 win team that had to go to the play-in because the West was so doggone tough. And I think the West is once again going to be tough this year. But I think the Kings, they have the talent and they have what it takes to rub elbows with the top teams in the West. And it's one of those where, not to sound like a broken record, but I'm really excited to see how Fox and DeRozan gel with one another. So you're saying your Kings didn't move Herter. Do you think DeMar and Herter will play together as starters? Um, the way I'm looking at it right now, clearly you're going to have um, DeRozan in that starting lineup. Clearly, you're going to have Sabonis in that starting lineup. For me, it's one of those. I think it can work. I really do. I think it could work with Herter in the starting lineup along with DeRozan. I think what's going to happen, clearly, we still got a couple of months for training camps, but I think, Mike Brown is smart enough as a head coach. Okay. He's been around the NBA for a long time now. Very smart man. And he's going to find a way to make it work. And I think, in training camp, that gives you an opportunity, to see what are the best case scenarios for your team. This isn't a mid-season deal for Sacramento. This is something that is happening clearly right now over the summer, and they're going to have the opportunity to work. And I guarantee you, DeRozan being the vet that he is, okay, he's going to come in and he's probably already going to start working with a guy like De'Aaron Fox to get on, the same wavelength with those guys. And some of these guys, they get together even before training camps open to work with one another. So to answer your question, I think it can work with DeMar and Herter in the starting lineup. You're saying I think DeMar and Herter with 4 and the Terminator with Keegan will be a killer. Listen, for me, and I talked about this with a good friend of mine last night. Shout out to Big Earn real quick. But the fact that they did not have to give up a guy like Keegan Murray, I think was huge for them because when I first heard that the Kings were interested in, picking up DeMar DeRozan and like they were working out a deal with the Bulls for a sign and trade for DeMar DeRozan, right off the bat, you think, okay, who else is going to be involved in that deal? You knew it wasn't going to be De'Aaron Fox. Clearly not. Because, if you're Sacramento, you don't get better by saying, hey, let's get DeMar DeRozan, but trade him for De'Aaron Fox. No. So clearly he wasn't going to be in the equation. Okay, you keep Sabonis. Malik Monk, I think, was totally out of the equation as far as trading him. So you keep him and you get that prolific scorer coming off of your bench. But you don't have to part with a guy like Keegan Murray. I think that was big. And that was a win, a huge win for Sacramento, aside from coming out there and saying, okay, we picked up DeRozan. Because what we've seen in recent years, especially in recent years in the NBA, depth is so important, especially in the playoffs. Okay. You look at the Celtics that just won the NBA championship a couple of weeks ago. Depth helped them win. You go back last year with the Nuggets, depth. The Milwaukee Bucks, depth. Okay. And we could keep going on and on and on. So now, if you're Sacramento, it's one of those whereas, we've seen teams like really zero in on a De'Aaron Fox from a scoring aspect, especially if a Malik Monk wasn't in the game, if Sabonis wasn't on top of his offensive game. That changes right now. Okay. And I think that is going to help take the Kings into that next tier. You're talking about a Sacramento Kings team. Believe it or not, you got to go back to 2005 to find the last time that the Kings won 50 games in the regular season. The Rick Adelman days, of course, Mike Bibby, Peja Stojakovic, Chris Webber, Vladi Dottie. That's how long ago it was. I think that narrative changes this season, provided that everybody, the key components, if you will, are healthy enough. Because again, the Kings were probably going to be a 50-win team this past season, but the injuries coming down the stretch changed that. That's when we saw Sacramento dip in the standings, and of course, in dipping in the standings, they dipped out of the top six. They fell into the play-in tournament, and of course, unfortunately for them, the rest was history. You're saying DeMar and Fox spoke, and DeMar liked what Fox was selling, and he came to Sacramento. Listen, I think it's a big deal because it's one of those where I want to say maybe like 7 to 10 days ago, you had people out there linking. There were rumors, okay, about DeMar DeRozan going to the Lakers, and it made sense because the Lakers theoretically needed to make a move. You have DeMar DeRozan, a Southern California guy from Compton, born and raised, and kind of like fit for him to come back, and put on the purple and gold. And usually, most basketball guys who grew up in that area, they for the most part were Laker fans. So it's like, okay, you get to come home and play for your hometown team, so to speak. But when it didn't work out financially, and then you heard the reports that there was probably going to take a third team to make it, happen, and then you heard that the Kings jumped in. Listen, kudos to them because you have to be aggressive, and especially right now. And I've been saying this for the last couple of months. We're going to see more player movement than we're accustomed to this summer, due to the fact of number one, it was a weak draft. Also, that second cap apron has and will continue to be a game changer for teams. And the Bulls, like I said, the Bulls are just done in by injuries, especially the Lonzo Ball injury. So they're looking to retool, they're looking to reset, and they're looking to focus on a 2025 NBA draft, which is supposed to be more enticing, more compelling, more productive, having more talent than just what we saw in this year's draft. So if you're Sacramento and you want to keep up with the Joneses in the Western Conference, okay, you've got to go out there and you've got to get somebody else because you look at Oklahoma City, they're a young team. They're not going away. I know that the Denver Nuggets just lost KCP in free agency to Orlando. Not surprised that he left, but they are still formidable. Minnesota's not going anywhere as far as, you know what, they're still going to be around. We just saw Dallas pick up a Klay Thompson. So again, you've got to have depth. And I think Sacramento saw the writing on the wall and they're saying, hey, listen, if we want to keep up with the Joneses in the West, we've got to go out there and we've got to get more talent. And I think DeMar DeRozan fills that void for them. And of course, you know, these guys want to play with other all-star caliber players. And it's one of those basically for the most part, every stop of the way, with the exception of San Antonio, DeMar DeRozan has played with those guys. And now he gets an opportunity to play with one of the better young scorers in the NBA, like a De'Aaron Fox. Uh, Definitely appreciate the sub and like, man. Definitely appreciate it. You're saying I've seen DeMar walk in to Golden One Center last night, and I've seen DeMar many years, and he never looked uh, this happy. I tell you what, it's one of those where I watched that game last night, that summer league game, and you could feel the love. I mean, you had him sitting courtside with De'Aaron Fox, as well as the team owner of the Kings, Vivek. I'm not even like the last name is just slipping my mind right now. So please forgive me on that. But it's one of those where he did look happy, and it was one of those where I think everybody there embraced him. And I think, you know, not just, you know, ownership, not just the Kings personnel, but the fans. Everybody was happy. And it's one of those where I guarantee you the Kings just sold some more tickets for next season, just based off of yesterday, okay? If anything else. So I'm looking at this. I like, again, not to sound like a broken record, but I think this was a win-win. And it's one of those where, you know, periodically you can get a trade that can change the fortunes of a franchise. You go back about 25 years ago when the Kings got Chris Webber from the Washington Wizards. Of course, it didn't lead to an NBA championship, but getting C-Web to Sacramento changed the fortunes of the Kings, changed how people looked at that Kings team. And of course, we saw the Kings, I think it was 2002, make the Western Conference Finals. And, you know, it was one of those where you always looked at the Kings as a potential team that could win the West. I think, again, this DeMar DeRozan acquisition is one of those that bumps the Kings up. You have a head coach in Mike Brown who, you know, has taken a team to the NBA Finals. You have quality players on this team. You have an all-star scorer in De'Aaron Fox, and now you get him somebody to work with. It's kind of like, to me, it's the equivalent of having a power hitter in the middle of your lineup for a baseball team, and now you give him some protection. That's what the Sacramento Kings were able to do. And in giving De'Aaron Fox that protection, I think his productivity will definitely go up. And I think, again, the Kings are definitely going to be formidable. You're saying Weber didn't choose to come to Sacramento. Definitely. DeMar chose to come here on his own. That is a big move because it's one thing to be traded because you're just traded, but it's another thing where you get traded because that's where you want to go. And to your point, you're right. That is a difference right here. DeMar's happy, um, and I think the Kings are going to be happy, you know, going forward with him. So I like, again, like I said before, not trying to sound like a broken record, but truly, this trade was a win-win for all three teams involved. I think every team comes out of this smelling like a rose. The Spurs get Harrison Barnes. They also get another pick. And I will say this, it's a 2031 unprotected pick. More often than not, you don't pay attention to those picks coming down the road. How often have we seen it where those picks that came down the road turned into something. You remember years ago when the Brooklyn Nets gave up all of those picks to the Boston Celtics to get Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce, and people didn't pay attention to it? Well, it wasn't too long after that that the Nets got bad, and those picks turned out to be Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown, and the rest is history. We've seen it happen with other teams as well. So who knows what happens with that unprotected pick for the Spurs in 2031? They get themselves a quality veteran like a Harrison Barnes to work with that team. And then the Chicago Bulls, I like what they did as well as they are looking to retool. Barnes is in a good place with Webb. Pop will use him to teach Wemby. Absolutely. I mean, you think about it. Um, they just got Chris Paul, okay, and Chris Paul is going to be another coach on the floor, and it's going to be one of those where not just for Wemby, but the Spurs have a very young team, and then you're bringing in a guy like Harrison Barnes, a proven veteran. Aside from that, a guy who knows what it takes to win a championship at this level, as he was a part of that Warriors team that won the championship and a key contributor, okay, when they won in 2015. Nonetheless, you're bringing this guy in to one of the youngest teams in the NBA. And when it's all said and done, this is a Spurs team. They're young. They don't know how to win yet. Okay. They don't know what it takes. So you're bringing in some quality vets like a CP3, a future Hall of Famer, and Harrison Barnes. I definitely think it works. And again, like I said, the Bulls, they're shedding salary. Clearly, it was, not Barnes, excuse me, DeRozan, agreed to a new 3-year deal for 74 million. But nonetheless, they're going cheaper right now because if you're going to be a bad team, just be a bad, inexpensive team. And I think next step is going to be Zach LaVine as Chicago looks to retool. But like I said before, good place for DeMar DeRozan, good landing spot. He hasn't played. Well, he's going back to the West, should I say, because he did play with the Spurs. But for the first time in a long time, I think DeMar DeRozan really has a good shot to make a run at his first NBA championship. But folks, that's going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time to thank all of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you haven't already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. Easy Car Mods, pleasure to have you chiming in tonight. Definitely appreciate your comments on all things Sacramento Kings. Please feel free to keep checking me out. We'll be talking a lot of NBA basketball over the summer because, like I said, there's a lot of moves that have gone down, and I still expect more to be coming down as well, the pike. And it's one of those things, believe it or not, before you blink, it's going to be training camp time in the NBA. I know summer leagues are going to get or have started to get going right now. We've got the Olympics right around the bend as well, and then before you know it, training camps are going to be here. So definitely keep keep me right there, on the alert, if you will, as far as like when you're ready to chime in for some more things, not just Sacramento Kings, but NBA basketball as well. And once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I'm signing off. And I'm saying thanks once again for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.